the Rambam, Maimonides, why does he say that was justified? I mean, because how can you? There's only one. No one else is accused of in that story.
Oh, interesting question.
So how can you justify killing everybody? Kill the. Okay, that's interesting. But how can you, it's the Rambam says it's because everybody else didn't do anything about it.
So it really all depends, like, on where the conversation goes.
Every one of these podcasts is going to be edited down to time, or no?
Depending on how it goes.
Oh, you haven't released anything yet.
I haven't released anything yet. You're my fourth.
Not offended.
No, it's fine. You're my fourth. Yeah, you've never struck me as a
fourth.
person.
You don't even get a medal. You don't even get a medal for fourth place.
You don't strike me as somebody who gets offended very easily. You usually do the offending.
That depends on the situation.
So you're the fourth, and right now it's really like asking people who I know and have, for this favor, especially like when you're starting out. And the people that I've been having on have been people who like have kind of been with me through this journey through Yiddishkeit. So the podcast is called the Uncomfortable Yid Podcast.
Okay.
I'm
a pretty comfortable Yid, I'll just tell you.
I know you're a pretty comfortable Yid. I'm the uncomfortable Yid.
Okay.
I've been, it's like I'm searching for something within Yiddishkeit and I just don't know what it is. And I thought that talking to Rebbeim and people who are comfortable within their Yiddishkeit, maybe I'll find it that way. And if I don't find it, maybe somebody out there will, and maybe I'm going about it all wrong. Maybe it's lack of learning. Maybe I just have to learn more. I asked the rabbi who was on before if maybe he thinks Yiddishkeit is kind of like lahavdil, like playing guitar. Like
so you really know how to play. You sound like an idiot.
Yeah, until you study and apply it, then you're not a guitarist.
Interesting. That's very interesting.
So, he said, well, we learn Torah in the womb, and so really it's all inside of us, and it just needs to be brought out. But I think I could say that about a guitarist also. Like
that's very interesting. A very interesting metaphor.
So. So maybe it's just like
I would suggest to you, just on the face of it, that that I was in a band in college a little bit.
No way.
I can't play any instruments, but they were quite good. So I would stand there with a bass guitar and pretend to play.
Okay.
And we were quite good. They were good, and I was standing. I played and didn't mess it up.
Congratulations.
I would suggest to you that possibly. And I wouldn't normally do this, but I'm just saying, based on what you're telling me, I think Hasidus is kind of like my band experience.
Hasidus is kind of like your band experience.
Yeah, as long as you stand with the right band, it goes pretty well. All you have to do is not mess it up. So meaning, like, if you're like in a Hasidic group where the Rebbe really kind of speaks to you, and you're pretty happy with that situation, and the other Hasidim are into it, as long as you stand there and don't mess it up, you can have a pretty pleasant experience.
Yeah, but like when I hear something like that, like I don't want to be a sheep within Yiddishkeit.
It's not a matter of being a sheep because you're choosing it. A sheep doesn't actually choose anything. You're saying, I like this guy.
Right.
If I don't like him, I'll leave.
But so why do I like him? Like, this is the question that I have. It's like I have this pull towards Torah. I have this pull towards wanting to learn Torah. I have this pull towards wanting to give out Torah. And that's one of the reasons why I made this podcast, because I don't have the knowledge to be able to give out Torah. Anything that Torah related that would come out of my mouth would probably be puzzle. So
everything. Okay.
Not everything, but like, so this is a way for me to learn and also be able to give out Torah. So yeah, that's basically where I'm at with this. And one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on is because, look, I know you're a controversial person.
I don't feel that way at all.
Well, of course, because you're you. Because you're you.
Everything I say is the most normal thing in the world.
Obviously, of course. But like for me, I don't give a shit what
you say that on here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like I don't care what controversy you're in, because for the first 3 months that I was in Israel when I first came here in 2013, you're one of the reasons why I survived.
Yeah. But you'd be amazed at how many people do their damnedest to forget that.
I'm sure. I'm sure, and I hope to never forget that. But so staying, I remember my brother-in-law brought me, like, was just like, I have this place. I know this guy, Ben Packer, Rabbi Ben Packer, that runs this place called the Heritage House. I had no idea what it was. I actually wish that the lone soldiers had a little bit more of an influence on me, because since like October 7th happened, you know, like I have me and a few friends who didn't do the army, and we're like, after it happened, we were like, we really wish we did. And it's not like FOMO to go fight. It's like, you want to protect your people.
Right.
You know, all your friends are going out to war.
The army has made an effort to some degree to accommodate people like you. Not you, probably, unfortunately, but no, just because of your situation. But if you live in a certain place, they've made courses that you can do that are relatively short, and you become more or less a soldier, which maybe is a little, I don't know if the word is unfair, or I don't know what the word is exactly, but in a very short period of time, you reach the level of people who were in the army for years. And
what do you mean?
Meaning, like, if you were not in the army and you live in a certain community where they need help with their gardening, but you weren't in the army, so you can't help. So in those places, they've developed courses that are 3 weeks long, and they're real. You go and you live on this base, and it's very serious. It's very intense. But after 3 weeks, you are granted the level of being able to guard your community. Which means they give you a rifle and they give you the whole shebang.
Do they do like ulpan and stuff as well?
No.
That's I think
that the language is always an issue.
But that's personally, I feel one of the harder things about living in Israel is that going into the army is part of this culture. Like, there is something about the integration within the Israeli society that I feel like the army is pretty important.
It is, and it isn't. I think it is. But sometimes it's a little overplayed. A lot of it depends on what you do in the army also. I'm not saying that, like, things are useless. I'm not saying that. But there are certainly different levels and different levels of camaraderie. The more intense your service, the more close you're going to feel with those people. The more other people you've never met in your life are going to still feel close towards you because you have a shared experience. If you're a mechanic in the army, which is obviously very important. I'm not downing on mechanics in the army. I mean, without them, nothing will work. But it doesn't necessarily breed that camaraderie. Mm-hmm. If you meet a fellow mechanic from the army, you have what to talk about, obviously, but do you feel like a bond? I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure that's the experience.
I don't know. Just my experience from, like, being around friends, you know, who were in the army, not necessarily together, but there is this shared language that they have. Yeah. That, like, you're sitting there and you're like, man.
Okay. There's definitely truth to that, 100%. But I don't know. Again, sometimes I think it's a bit overplayed, and then there's a lot of things people can do, you know, to help, you know, to help the country, the people. The army's not the only way. Like,
so I mean, you've seen, and I want to get to the Heritage House, but you've seen throughout your years probably tons of guys come in and come out and come in and come out. Like, what advice do you give people who maybe you don't necessarily think should be a lone soldier, but they want to do something within that realm?
I think every single person is different. There is, I mean, but I look at it that way.
Right.
Like, I don't think everybody should do the same thing or at all, like, at all. So every single person, you have to look at their situation, their health situation, mentally, physically, emotionally, religiously, and that's the main part of it. And what do they actually want to do? You don't want to tell somebody, hey, listen, you're in great shape. You seem to have your stuff together. I think you need to go to the highest level of combat. And they say, well, I don't want to do that. You know, I want to do something with medical stuff, you know, or something. I don't want to do that. And say, well, no, you have to. No, again, everything has to factor in.
Right.
So everybody's different. Everybody's really different. You have to look at each case completely different than every other case. And then I can only give advice. I can't, you know, I can't make anybody do anything.
You did the army?
Of course, yeah.
What
I was in Givati. It's an infantry unit.
Okay.
And I was in what's called a Hesder, which is I was in a unit of yeshiva students.
Oh,
we
interesting.
were all yeshiva students at the time.
Was there like this big rouse back then, like there is now, about the like Haredim not going to the army? And
it wasn't. Like I would say it wasn't, I guess, as much as it is now. But yeah, it was definitely there. Sure. I mean, it was an issue, I guess you could say.
What was your service like? What was your experience like?
My service, Baruch Hashem, was very good. I was with these guys. There were very few people in my unit from my yeshiva. The point is that you go with your fellow yeshiva students.
Oh,
but
okay.
I went to a primarily American yeshiva, so only a few guys went with us.
Americans.
Yeah, well, that makes sense, you know. So we were with other yeshivas, so we didn't know those guys. We met them, and you know, I'm obviously still friends with a lot of them till today. We've lost 2 guys actually in the current war. We didn't lose anybody when we were in the army together, thank God. But now we've lost 2 guys in this time. Anyway, so my service was very positive. It was very positive. It was during the Second Intifada, so there was no quiet nights. You know, there were no. It was very busy. And we served in Gaza back then, as is similar right now. Givati, the Givati unit was very heavily focused on Gaza, and so we were there our entire service, basically, in different parts. So when I was in the war now, I know all the locations, you know, because we were there. And my service was very positive. I mean, obviously there were negative aspects to it at times, but it was very positive. I'm from Virginia. I'm from the South.
Yeah, man.
Grew up next to a military base.
You're Hickville, yeah? You're a Hick? Would you consider yourself a Hick?
We're pretty familiar with how militaries work, you know, so there was no big surprises on that.
Do you still think the South will rise again?
I mean, hope and pray every day. But, you know, we slept in tents, which is fine. You know, some people think that's horrific. I thought that was...
Why? What's wrong with sleeping in a tent?
Yeah, I don't know. You're outside. I don't know.
I mean, how long did you sleep in a tent for? Not judging.
For months.
What, in Virginia or
no, it's in the army.
Oh, I was like, why are you sleeping in a tent in Virginia?
No, in the army we were in tents, you know. So people think that, some people don't like that, you know. I didn't care. So it was good. It was very good. Thank God, it was a very positive experience. It wasn't any different than I expected it to be, honestly. But it was it was good.
Was going to the army like always kind of like on your mind growing up?
Yeah.
Like you grew up from, very like tied into your Yiddishkeit in Israel and.
No, I didn't grow up from.
No.
No, we. Grew
I
up,
don't know. I realized before you coming here, I was like, I don't really know much about this man, but I have a bond.
Well, a lot of the information on Google is not so accurate. But
I actually looked up your OnlyFans.
It's good parsha. I grew up what I call Southern conservative. Our synagogue was conservative. However, we believed in everything. We did very little. You know, nobody kept kosher, nobody kept Shabbos, nobody kept those things. But nobody would ever say you don't have to. That would have been like, I guess, blasphemy. I don't know. Nobody would have said that. The rabbi kept kosher. The rabbi kept Shabbos. That was his job. And the rest of us didn't. But I always hoped that I would.
Really?
Yeah.
How did
he
that...
used to tell us we're supposed to, you know?
Oh, yeah.
And I would say to my parents, you know, what's going on? They'd say, well, I mean, there's not a kosher restaurant in the state. So what do you want to do about birthday parties? And I was like, oh. And I played sports as a kid. And obviously a lot of sports games are on Shabbos. So you want to play sports, you can't. I mean, people have.
Yeah, I went to public school, and my father's a conservative rabbi, so like we were the ones walked to shul, kept kosher. We did those things. Right. But because sports in public school were on Shabbos, I wasn't able to do them.
Right. And so I played sports in high school. And then I got to college. I had a little more my own freedom, I guess the word is. I'm not sure what it is. And I became more observant, yeah.
What brought you to Israel?
Oh, that was always part of the plan. I never saw any way around that. I never saw that as...
It was always your derech. It was always like on your derech.
It's easy for me to do. I'm from Virginia. So it wasn't like there was this massive Jewish community. You know,
you're talking like every Jew that's in Virginia is like, I'm going to Israel at one point.
Well, no, maybe not. But like, I think disproportionately... people make aliyah who are religious from Virginia. I mean, again, I am not judging, but I was just recently in the 5 towns in New York. I mean, it's pretty good. Yeah. Like, it's a little cold, but like, yeah, I mean, they got some stuff over there, and they have good rabbis. They have good food. They have minyan every 15 minutes. I mean, like, literally the whole day. Like, it's pretty good.
One big shtiebel.
Yeah, so I'm saying, like, they've built a very nice thing there. The fact they don't want to leave it is not exactly so surprising to me. But for me, that was never really part of the thought process.
Well, you got to the Heritage House somehow. Like, can you first give a little background to the Heritage House, and then just tell me how you ended up running?
Well, the basic idea of the Heritage House that I did not start. It was started by Rabbi Meir Schuster, who was a legendary figure who used to stay by the Western Wall and meet people and try to convince them to go learn about Judaism. And he realized at some point that these people didn't necessarily have where to stay that was conducive to this situation. There wasn't any Jewish hostels in the old city. There weren't that many hostels at all. So he made his own basically hostel, one for boys and one for girls, where they would be more likely to go to Jewish classes and have Jewish experiences. And that was his idea. Now I continued it. I actually I worked there for many years when I was in yeshiva, helping out on Shabbos. I would be in yeshiva during the week, and on Shabbos I would help out in the Heritage House. Ironically, the first night I came to Israel when I was 21, when I basically moved to Israel after college. The first night my flight was very delayed. And I came to and I couldn't. I was supposed to move into Aisha Torah actually, and it was too late. There was nobody there, and so I tried to stay at the Heritage House, but they said I was too observant to stay there, which is ironic. But
why is that ironic?
Because I run the place.
Oh yeah, okay.
but anyway, there was another Southern guy, actually a guy from South Carolina, in the neighborhood, and someone said, "Oh, he's from the South. You're from the South. He'll probably take care of it," and he totally did. So I stayed with him, and we're still friends till today.
You seem to keep
25
friends.
years ago.
You seem to keep friends pretty well.
I keep enemies pretty well too.
I'm sure.
But yeah, of course.
So what's because I remember the deal with the Heritage House, and I don't know if it's changed or whatnot, because I know you moved.
Right.
The spot that we used to have was like amazing.
There were pluses and minuses, to be honest with you. A lot of pluses, I agree with you, but there were some things that I didn't realize how difficult they were until we moved. Such as? Well, just for example, there was a lot of glass in the Heritage House. That let in a lot of cold air or hot. So just the insulation in general? Yeah, that was that was a thing. The location, anybody could just walk in. It was on a main street. Yeah. Attracted it's not easy to find unsavory characters. It's not so easy to find you now unless you know where you're looking. We do not attract any unsavory characters now, which is a luxury. I didn't realize how much we suffered from that in the past. So we don't really worry about that stuff anymore. Like I said, there's pluses and minuses. The other house and the original location certainly had a lot more potential than the current location that we have. But at the time, we weren't really able to utilize that potential due to lack of funding to a large degree, and to the situation of the ownership of the house and everything. So anyway, again, pluses and minuses. So what's this cycle through? Was I, as somebody who wasn't a lone soldier coming to stay with you, was that more rare, or are you mainly focused on lone soldiers staying with you? At the time when you came, there were a lot. If I remember correctly, I think there were a lot less lone soldiers and more non-lone soldiers. It just maybe you remember the lone soldiers because they were there much longer. Yeah, maybe. They always shuffled through. They always shuffled through. So the other people come and go by nightly. These days, especially because of the situation with the war and the lack of tourism, it's definitely a lot more lone soldiers. Thankfully, we have a very good reputation among lone soldiers. I don't know how we wouldn't. We just host them. Mm-hmm. But you don't just host. You feed them meals. You have Shabbos. Yeah, it's a good scene. But so we have a lot of guys coming, either living in the house or just coming by. A good number of guys, and of course we're staying in touch with them. And then the war, obviously, it's very tense, and so someone to care, be in touch with them and understand what they're saying. Their parents. Some of the parents are less supportive, obviously, but the parents who are supportive, it's limited how much they can understand about what their kid is dealing with, you know. And obviously we have I know where they are. I know what's going on there. I know, you know, I can't know exactly what's going on, but, you know, obviously we're able to relate a lot better.
How did October 7th affect you and the house and the guys?
On October 7th itself, I came to the house. I knew that something had happened, but I didn't really know what. I came to the house, and there were guys there who were not observant. And they told me, listen, our phones are saying that bad stuff is happening. You know, maybe you want to look at some of this. And I did look at some of it, and I could tell that it was much worse than they thought. And then there was another guy in the house who was a lone soldier who's in the intelligence branch, which is unusual. But he is very smart guy. And he took me aside, and he said, listen, it's bad. Like it's a difficult situation. And we don't know what's going to happen in Jerusalem. You need to secure the house and, you know, be ready. So I was like, okay. But then our soldiers started getting called back. And some of the lone soldiers, due to just, I don't know what to call it, misguided policies, in my opinion, are not allowed to bring their weapons home. And so they were concerned that they're going to try to leave the old city in uniform without their weapons in a tense situation. So I was actually escorting them out of the old city one by one, because I do have a gun, you know. So I was escorting them out, which was weird. Like, I'm guarding the soldiers who are going to the.
Well, you're a pretty scary man.
Well, okay, but like it's like a funny thing. But anyway, so we were doing that. So there was a lot going on. We were active. It wasn't like we could just, I don't know, sit there, so to speak. And obviously, most of the religious world was just not aware of anything.
Well, it was Simchas Torah.
Yeah, they didn't have access to their phones. They didn't have access to the news. They were in areas where they didn't hear anything. Or maybe they heard a few sirens, but that was it. So they were kind of oblivious. But in our neighborhood, as in a lot of neighborhoods, you saw the soldiers going. Like, you could see them going. So, like, where are they going? Obviously, they're going to something. So, so people had an idea that things were quite serious, but we knew a lot of what was going on.
Did you see like a pickup of, because what was this statistic I heard? Like there was like 110% like of soldiers who came to help fight, and they didn't have, like, they had to send people back. Is this?
Yeah. Yeah. Everybody went. Everybody. I mean, there were people even who flew in from America.
Yeah.
Both Israelis and Americans.
That's what I wanted to know. Did you find that you were having maybe like a fuller house than usual because
we were having guys who came back from America and had nowhere to sleep? I mean, the army had no way of providing them housing.
I mean, I know, but you have like a finite amount of beds where we
had the couches. We had people on the couches. We had people all over the place. Yeah. Again, because the army, obviously, when you're on base, you're on base. But when you're not, or when you're waiting to get on base, I mean, they can't provide you with housing.
Right.
So yeah, guys knew about us and they came to us. Yeah, and then and then once they were in the army, they could be in. Some guys were in, for a very long time.
Oh, I have a friend who was in from the time October 7th started till only like 3 months ago.
No, but so there are people in who didn't get any break for quite some time.
Yeah.
And so when they would get out though, they come to us because where are they going to go? So we had guys like that again who came from America, and so yeah, we had a lot of situations like that. Obviously, motivation was extremely high.
Yeah.
I mean, how could it not be?
I think it's something special about the Jewish people. Just the amount of people that kind of flooded back to Israel 100%. To fight.
Not just that, and also the funding that the people in America sent. That was also very significant.
Yeah, you had tons of people like sending money, sending like bulletproof vests, and
and then solidarity missions. Also, solidarity missions, I thought was initially I wasn't so sure how important that was, but in the end, I think it is very important. It was very important certainly for the people who came, but also for the people who met them. I think they were very moved. I saw soldiers in Hebron specifically where Americans would buy them pizza. It's a very common thing. It's a very common thing. I didn't think much of it. You buy us a pizza. It's a nice gesture, but and you could see the soldiers were very moved by it. And I was actually kind of surprised by that. but they were very moved by it, and they were giving out hugs and stuff. And the guys who were giving the pizza or whatever it was were also kind of surprised at like the soldiers' reactions,
right?
But I always tell people it's true in the old city in general also. But if you think your situation's not so great, look to the Armenians, because they're always worse. They're always worse. And they had a war. Armenia had a war.
Yeah, there's this whole thing I heard on was it PBD? Patrick David. One of his questions is why Israel doesn't acknowledge the Armenian genocide, which I don't really understand what the Armenian genocide is.
That's a specific thing. It's interesting that we haven't done it now. I think we probably will,
because of what's going on with Turkey.
Yeah. That's the only reason we haven't done it. I mean, nobody disputes the. Can
you give me? Can we like go on a side and can you give me a little background about the Armenian genocide?
Well, again, the word genocide I think is part of the issue. In terms of what you mean by genocide, were Armenians massacred? Definitely. Were they massacred because they were Armenian? 100%. It was definitely an ethnic cleansing situation. Okay. Now, were they trying to kill every Armenian in the world? I don't think so. They were trying to ethnically cleanse Armenians from lands that the Armenians believe should be theirs, and that Turkey believes should be theirs. A prominent example would be Mount Ararat, which is the name of the street.
Isn't that where? They believe
Noah's Ark came to rest, and that's why the Armenian priests wear those pointy hats. Their hats have a point at the top, and that symbolizes Mount Ararat.
Oh, okay.
And so obviously they feel very strongly that it should be part of Armenia because they wear the whole getup, and the Turks feel otherwise, and the Turks, really put it on them. They really did, yeah. And I don't think anybody besides like Turkey disputes that. I don't even think Turkey really disputes that. They just don't want to talk about it.
Right. I think just the frustration that some people have is because they say because the Jewish people went through something like the Holocaust, how come our state is not recognizing it?
I think that. I mean, I'm not big into Armenia in general, I would say, but yeah, of course, that's a pretty valid point.
Yeah.
And I think the Israeli response would never be, "Hey, that didn't happen," or "That wasn't important," or "We don't care about you," in that sense. Yeah. I don't think anybody would say that. They would say this is just real politics.
I mean, a lot of people say a lot about us. That is not true.
In that case, though, I think that it's fairly obvious that Israel has tried to maintain a relationship with Turkey. Whether that's a good idea or not, obviously it didn't turn out so well. But I don't think it's certainly not by a lack of Israel trying. Israel has been very clear that they've been trying to maintain a relationship with Turkey. And that hasn't worked out because Turkey is crazy. But that's why they haven't recognized. I would be very surprised if things don't get better with Turkey, which they don't look like they're going to.
No.
And that Israel will not recognize the Armenian genocide. I don't know why we wouldn't do that. Armenia has not been so great with Israel. So the only reason I think we wouldn't recognize it is to spite them, I suppose. But again, it's no real dispute.
To do something to just spite someone.
Well, there are Holocaust deniers who seemingly really don't believe the Holocaust happened. I don't think
you have October 7th deniers also.
Right. I don't think there's really any deniers of the massacre of Armenians. There might be a fight about how to term it exactly. But that's more like semantics than anything else.
Right.
And Turkey has this shtick where they're like, no one's allowed to talk about it. It's kind of like a bad breakup with a girl in 7th grade or something. But that's the only thing. Now, Armenia had a war with Azerbaijan, and they did very, very poorly. And there are a lot of Armenians around the world. Their diaspora is bigger than their population within Armenia.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And some of them have done quite well financially, not just the Kardashians. And there was not any kind of people coming to fight or shed it too much money. It was kind of like, well, I mean, we used to live there, and now we live over here.
Right.
And there were some demonstrations and stuff, but not so much. Definitely not compared to us.
Yeah, nothing like you were having and we're still having.
Right.
Yeah,
nothing compared.
It's I think it's one of the things that is just so like baffling just so baffling about being Jewish and about how the rest of the world seems to view us.
Definitely the after October 7th, people have definitely stepped up.
But it's like after October 7th, it's almost like there was like this like magma that was just boiling below the surface, and all of a sudden, like anti-Semitism just exploded.
Well, I would say from both sides. There were Jews who were good Jews. They weren't maybe doing so much, but they certainly meant well. And inside them, there was this sense of pride and brotherhood. And it was just sitting there, though.
Right.
And October 7th pushed that over. And as you said, the same thing with the anti-Semites. They had this serious anti-Semitism that was sitting there. Maybe they weren't doing so much, but it was there. And after October 7th, they were like, well, let's go.
It's just exploded.
It's one of those moments that, really brings out the best or worst of people.
Yeah. The world's never going to be the same.
Yeah. I don't,
you think it's you think that because I feel like it's almost like the genie's,
I don't think Islam's any different.
I feel like the genie's out of the bottle now.
I don't know about that.
No,
I think if you look in history, you'll see numerous examples, specifically with the Muslims, doing similar things, and most people don't seem to care too much today about those things they did. I think they.
But no one seems to care about what Hamas did. I mean, I don't want to say no one, obviously, but there's a huge just portion of the world that is like Hamas is like so gung ho for Hamas. They're like,
yeah, it's a little strange.
It's not even that they're going to forget about it. It's almost like they're continuing to root it on.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, a lot of people point out the whole like queers for Palestine stuff is hilarious. There's a lot of ironic, stuff in that, especially with the more liberal people supporting the, religious extremism. It's hilarious in that it's just so ridiculous.
Well, I just don't I understand how people can have an opinion on anything, but like I personally had to come to this understanding when I moved here of like, we don't live in the West, we live in the East, and it's a completely different culture. And how can you have an opinion or any basis for trying to understand what we're going through, what they're going through?
I think part of the West is one of the main tenets of the West has always been to tell other people how to be, regardless of the situation. So I think that's kind of like part of being. But
that's like Western. That's part of I think. I
don't think people in the East really care to tell people in the West.
No, because I feel like people in the East think everyone in the West is nuts.
Yeah, but they don't. But they also don't tell them what to do. It's just not part of the thing. But the West, it's part of the thing. It's part of the thing to tell everybody that you're better.
Well, it's what happens when you think you're an empire, I feel like.
Maybe that's why. I don't know. Yeah, but there's definitely the difference there.
I'm curious, how do you think, how do you feel that Israel responded to October 7th? Because my brain
Let me
sometimes.
take a drink first.
Yeah. No, because my brain sometimes, my brain goes, we're living in the East and we try to have a Western society, but it's not necessarily conducive to how the Middle East fights and works. Like I look at it as like Hamas went biblical on us, and my brain goes back to Shimon and Levi when Dina when Dina was and they wiped out that entire civilization.
And what does the Rambam say? The Rambam, Maimonides, why does he say that was justified? I mean, because how can you? There's only one. No one else is accused in that story.
Oh, interesting question.
So how can you justify killing everybody? It's okay. That's interesting. But it's the Rambam says it's because everybody else didn't do anything about it. They didn't do anything to stop that from happening, or to protest it afterwards. When you look at Gaza, you want to talk about not protesting. They were cheering. If they didn't take part in it, they were cheering wildly. So, I mean, and it's not one. Unfortunately, it's many more, and it's not one. It's many more, and listen. October the Israeli response to October 7th baffles my mind. I don't understand it at all. I don't understand it. I'm sure there's obvious psychological things going on that any psychologist can explain, which I'm not. But I just don't understand it. I don't understand it. I see what they did.
What specifically don't you understand?
The Israeli response, like the I don't say lack of response, because there certainly was a response, but the lack of severity in the response, I don't understand.
You think we held back way too much?
Oh yeah.
Do you are you one of these people who, and like, let's get us get us canceled? Are you one of the people who think like Gaza should have been leveled, like we should have just gone in and just destroyed everything?
I'm not necessarily qualified to say exactly what should have been done, but I mean, I can't really imagine another situation that deserved whatever it takes. Meaning, like, I mean, what these people did was absolutely horrific, and nobody's
horrific doesn't even.
I'm saying, but no one's even close to sorry about it. Now, one of the ways we've cheated on this one, and I'm not saying this is a bad idea, but one of the ways we've cheated on this, and we have cheated on this, okay, is to not show the video, right? A very tiny percentage.
Show which video?
The October 7th video.
All of it.
Yeah,
because some of it has been
percentage of people, certainly Israelis, and I have not seen these videos. I've not seen these videos, and they showed it in the Knesset, and it became a mass trauma event. Ambulances were rushed there because people couldn't breathe. Okay, now
they were having viewings.
Not of the real videos. Most of us have not seen. Okay, we know what happened to certainly to some degree, but we have not seen those videos. And I'm not saying we should. I've intentionally not seen them myself. But I wonder if the response would be different. I wonder how much we're able, I don't know if the word is cognitive dissonance, I'm not sure if that's the correct term, where we know what happened, but we kind of pretend like it wasn't that bad, because that requires too much from us to deal with. And if you don't actually see it, it's not like you don't acknowledge it, but it's like, I don't know, okay. Because, like, I don't know. I don't get it. I don't understand the I know they're hostages, and I know we're trying to rescue the hostages. And I obviously...
Yeah, maybe they'll be back soon.
Yes, of course. Obviously. However, like, this idea that, like, these people deserve any semblance of mercy in any way, I just think it's insane. I mean, I think it's completely, literally insanity.
I mean, is it us who are like still have this naivete of like maybe we can get to some sort of peace, or is it more?
No, I don't think
is it more
there.
the Western like kind of
there.
pressure on Israel to not go in full force?
Well, those are both obviously factors. The first one, I don't think. I don't think anyone's there anymore. Certainly not when it comes to Gaza. I think there are people who are pretending like the Arabs in Judea and Samaria are different, which I think is not nearly accurate. Okay, all the polls say it's not accurate, and basic conversations will tell you it's not accurate. But people pretend. Okay, they can pretend, right? Okay, fine. But no one can pretend about Gaza because like there's all these videos, right? But
they still can pretend. They do.
Well, I don't.
Or we're talking about Israeli and Jews in general.
Israeli Jews are not pretending that the Gazans are going to make peace with us anytime soon. I don't know if you could find anybody like that. That'd be a tough find. Okay. However, I think Israelis, to a large degree, a certain segment of the Israeli public, due to Western influence, do feel like there is a limit to what can be done. That is based on I don't know what. The last few hundred years or so of Western Enlightenment, where certain things are just not acceptable,
right?
Whether it's the Geneva Convention or whatever, and I don't see any source for that in Judaism, first of all, and besides that, I don't see any source for that in this region. Nobody else seems to hold by that.
Yeah.
Are we going to be the only ones who do? And people say yes, we're going to be the only ones who do because we're either better. Or smarter, or more enlightened, or more moral. I don't know. All those terms don't sound good. I think people feel like that sounds pompous.
But like, is moral?
And I don't find a place for that.
I don't know. I don't think necessarily. I feel like certain words have been corrupted in, like the word morality. Like, who says to wipe off evil from the face of the planet is not moral. I know you're killing people, but isn't the moral thing to allow peace to prosper?
Saying something and doing something are two different things,
for sure.
And you know, I mean, you look at these people in America specifically, or Europe, whatever, who are protesting against Israel, and it's I mean, listen. If someone gets up and says, listen, I hate Jews, I don't care what they do. I hate them. And so they're doing something, so I hate them. I'm protesting. That makes sense to me. That makes total sense to me. All right, I got that. That's consistent. But if you're up there saying, like, you know, how dare Israel do this stuff? I'm like, are you paying attention? Are you watching the same movie? Like, I don't know what's going on here, but like, do you see what happened over here? And I don't like to get into the whole, some Israelis are like this, so some Israelis are like that, and these people deserve things less than that. I don't want to get in that game. Of course, but you can't ignore the fact that the people who are affected by this, at least initially, were all leftists, you know, with very few exceptions, and besides the security forces. But the civilians were all leftists. And like, so
weren't they all like a lot of them were on the forefront of trying to make peace with
100%.
Gaza?
Well, yeah, 100%. And it's like, I mean, how on earth can you justify this behavior? I mean, now look, if you say I am a Muslim fundamentalist or what, and I believe that jihad or whatever you want to call it is justified, any means necessary to recover our land. Okay, you know what? I mean, again, there's a certain consistency to that, right? We're seeing it in Syria.
Sure.
We're seeing it in Syria.
At least they're honest.
These horrible videos that are coming out of Syria now, where they're making people bark before they kill them and things like this.
I haven't seen these.
Oh yeah, I mean, look, these guys, they're not holding anything back. They'll tell you 100% this was the plan from the beginning, and these other people are apostates to Islam, and they rough them up for a while, you know, and so then they're giving it back to them. All right, who am I to say? Okay, but like, and by the way, nobody in the West cares. Nobody cares because they're like, hey, that's your business. You do what you got to do, right?
So why is everyone up in our business?
Because they hate Jews.
Do you think it's that simple?
Yeah, it's that. Now there's some idiots. There's always the useful idiots, you know, and those useful idiots might have high IQs, but they're still idiots.
That's one of the questions that I have is like, when does ignorance stop being a excuse?
Yeah, that's a very good question. That's a very good question, because if I say, you know, if I'm drunk driving, God forbid, right, and I hit a bunch of people, and I say, well, I didn't know what the legal limit was. You know, and that's gonna be true. That could be 100%. Nobody's gonna care.
Right.
Nobody, including the law, is gonna, and rightfully so, because the results are so awful that nobody cares how we got here, right? And it's the same thing here. Like, if you are gonna side against the Jewish people in this particular situation, whether it's your religion, whether it's your ignorance, whether it's I don't think it matters.
So do you actually not believe that it has anything to do with, you know, there's this whole idea in the West of like, if you're lower on the, what is it, the DEI, the like lower on like the minority scale kind of thing, that you're automatically oppressed, and that's what they think is going on in Israel with Israelis and Palestinians, and
there are definitely people like that. I don't know how many there are. There's definitely people like that, but I would throw them into the same boat as these other people. Like, that's stupid. That's a stupid way of looking at things. So, okay, since I think that is a genuinely stupid way of looking at things, maybe that's a justification for them doing something stupid. Maybe so. But I think when the results are so bad that I don't care.
Yeah.
Like, I don't care. Like, if you can't get through this situation on the right side, it could be you have 1,000,001 excuses. I don't care.
You're right.
I don't care.
Right.
And I think, and I also, I mean, maybe controversial, I don't know. But, you know, when it comes to anti-Semitism, there's more or less two ways of dealing with it, right? There's the educational way, where you say, you must be ignorant of the facts. So if I explain to you the facts in an environment that you can understand, and in words that you can understand, and all that stuff, right? You'll come around, or most people will come around, right? That's one idea, right? Okay, is that true? I don't know. I'm not into it personally. I don't think it works efficiently.
I mean,
maybe we're not finding the right tools. I don't know why it doesn't work. I think the ADL, for example, is a disaster. Besides their liberal nonsense, I think the whole idea is just stupid.
I mean, most of the stories that I've heard of people who have not liked Jews and them turning around is not so much being taught in a class of this is why your view is wrong. It's more that they've actually had experiences with Jewish people.
Well, I'm saying the one way that they say that you can stop this is by educating them, by showing them I don't know. It doesn't seem to work to me. There's another way, which is to scare them, right? Intimidation. You say, listen, I don't know why you've gotten to this point where you don't like Jews, but let me explain to you why it's not worth it for you, right? And I think that would work much better.
Why is it not worth it for them?
Because we'll kick your butt. Well, either economically, physically, however it needs to be. Whatever it is that will get you to not bother us, well, then that's what we're going to do. And I don't really care how you get there, right? But you will get there, right? You will get to that point. And I think that should be the way we do things. And I think in that topic, Israel is lacking. I think the state of Israel needs to take a much more obviously we're involved with the war right now, and okay, of course, but in general, I think the Israeli state needs to take a much more proactive role in fighting global anti-Semitism that way. I'm not saying to necessarily totally get rid of education.
Then you'll really have people believing we control the world,
which doesn't bother me,
right?
As long as they're afraid to do anything, as long as they're afraid. Or what, however it takes for them not to mess with us, I'm okay with it. I'm okay with that.
It's rough, just because, like, at least I think first we have to figure out before we deal with the rest of the world. I feel like we have to figure out how to deal with the anti-Semitism that's within our own country itself. Like, my brain, I understand you can't generalize everything, but like we've talked about, there's a huge percentage of the Arab population that believes that Israel belongs to them, and they'll do anything in order to achieve their goal of getting that land back. Now, I understand that there is a minority that loves living in Israel and understands that this is probably the best place in the Middle East that you could live, at least rights wise. But when does
I'm sorry to stop you, but
I could be wrong.
Well, I think the overwhelming majority of Arabs understand that this is the best place they can live rights wise. They're well aware of that, and they're not interested in necessarily giving that up so easily. However, that is not necessarily mutually exclusive to wanting to return this place to Islamic rule. Just because the things are very good for them right now doesn't mean that they're not willing to suffer in order to get this other goal. I mean, there's a book that I highly recommend. I highly recommend this book. It's written by a leftist, okay? But I highly recommend it. It's called Palestine 1936, okay? And it's written about the Arab revolt against the British from 1936 to 1938. And it was written before October 7th. Without October 7th in mind. However, it explains so much of October 7th, and that the Arabs of the time were willing to take on the British, which was an empire, right? And the British really put it on them. I mean, they really put it on them. They didn't mind it. And that whole revolt was instigated by a guy who came from Syria to Israel and killed a British policeman and a Jew, and he was hunted down by the British and killed, right? And that was a big mistake strategically. Big mistake.
That the British hunted him down?
No, that he started this thing.
Right.
It went really badly for the Arabs, really badly. And according to the book, and I think he's right, it leads to a large degree to the founding of the State of Israel. His mistakes. But the Arabs aren't bothered by it. Not only are the Arabs not bothered by it, Hamas's military wing is named after him. You think they don't know what happened with him? Of course they do. Doesn't bother them.
What's the military?
It was 100 years ago.
What's it? So what's his name?
It's Al-Qassam. Is Adin Al-Qassam? It's named after this guy who was a disaster from a purely historical political view. But by them, it's intention that matters, not results. Everything's about intention. Everything else is Allah. And when people look at Hamas and they say, how could they have done this? How could they have thought that we wouldn't respond? How could they not realize that this would set back their cause? Who says they didn't? Who says they didn't realize all that? Who says they don't realize that now? Who said that? They never said that. You said that. Not you, but
I appreciate the clarification.
People are saying that. How could they not? Who says they didn't realize? Why are you being so judgmental? I don't know what the word is. Why are you assuming so much here? Why don't you learn a little bit about their culture?
Well, so
just because it's a disaster doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. It's all about intention.
Well, so where I was going with the whole like majority and minority, right? I feel like so many people focus on the minority, but when do we focus on the majority? Like, when do we focus on the fact that maybe?
Oh, I would tell. Sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
I would just say, but the police and the certainly and the army, to a large degree, are focusing on the majority. You can see the difference. You can see it very. I don't know if people realize the Israeli police, really took a lot of casualties.
But
they've changed the way they operate because they understand that when you have villages where, whatever number you want to use, 99%, 98.7% of the people, would participate in such an event, you need to relate to that village differently. Because if the call is given to do these things, you see what can happen. So I think those security services are definitely paying attention to those majorities.
But I'm talking more in the sense of, like, can we continue living with these people surrounding us?
A lot of people certainly have said no. I mean, a lot more people after October 7th. A lot of Jewish communities that employed their Arab neighbors are not doing it anymore. And even
I asked this not out of hate or anything. It's just like it's how much longer and how many more lives of our people do need to be sacrificed before someone goes enough. Like, I'm sorry.
I think, for example, Naftali Bennett, I'm not a big fan of. I'll say that on the microphone. Not a big fan. But one of Naftali Bennett's ideas was to annex Area C of Judea and Samaria, where all the Jewish communities are, and where there are some Arabs, not many.
Can you quickly explain Area A, B, and C?
I could try. Area A, B, and C is a division of what the world calls the West Bank, what Israelis call and Jews call Judea and Samaria. And Area A, this is part of the Oslo Accords. Area A is under full Palestinian control, both security and administratively. Area C is under full Israeli control, both administratively and security. And Area B was supposed to be a cooperation. Obviously, that hasn't gone very well. So it depends on where Area B is and whether it's more like C or whether it's more like A. But in short, Israeli Jews can live in Area C. They cannot even go into Area A. Area A Arabs can go into Area C. And there are Arabs who live in Area C. However, most Arabs, the overwhelming majority of Arabs, live in Area A under Palestinian administrative and security control. Now, of course, the Israeli army today does enter Area A regularly to deal with problems. So that's kind of that in a nutshell. I hope that was helpful.
Appreciate it.
But there was an idea to make all of Area C part of Israel officially. But there are some Arabs in those areas. What about them? Mm-hmm. So the idea was, well, if they want, they can become Israeli citizens. Okay? Well, how so? And the answer was they would have to take some kind of pledge or swear or whatever you want to call it that they're not against the state of Israel, and then they could get citizenship. Okay, does that never happened? Obviously, this is an idea. Would that work? Would that make people feel safer if people did that? I don't know. That's interesting, right? Mm-hmm. The Israeli Arabs certainly never did that, right? Israeli Arabs in Jerusalem are overwhelmingly residents, not citizens. They've never done that. Most of them have not sought citizenship, even though they're entitled to. So, I mean, I don't know what it would take for Israelis to feel safer among this population. But at this point, it would take a lot, I think. I think it would take a lot. I think even Israelis who are, I mean, listen, people like Ehud Olmert and other left-wing figures, they don't necessarily, Olmert has said it out loud, that he's not saying that we don't have a claim to Judea and Samaria. He's not saying that. He's just saying that it doesn't practically work for him. And he thinks it's better to make a separation. And then we have to give up places that are very important to us, then that's what we should do. That's his view. Obviously, I disagree with that, but that's his view. The main point of the left for many years has been, we can't live with these people. Let's find a way not to. And from the right, it's been, well, we don't want to live with these people, but we can't figure out a way not to, and we're not willing to give up these areas. And it's too dangerous to give up these areas, so we're not going to do it. It's much more nuanced than people make it out to be. And so this is not new. It's not new that people are concerned about this. But after October 7th, it's certainly taken on a much higher urgency.
Well, I have a question, and I'm not. I want to make this clear. I'm not pushing for this or not. I'm just curious. Is there a thought out there of just kicking them out of our land, kicking them out of Eretz Yisrael?
Again, that's one of those things that's much easier said than done.
No, for sure. A friend of mine and I had this conversation because there are really no good options when it comes to this.
Listen, there are certainly some Arabs who I know personally, who after October 7th have looked at the situation. These are more successful Arabs, okay, financially, economically, and more educated than just the average, I guess you would say. These are professionals. And they've looked at the situation, they've gone, this isn't going to work. It's just not going to work. Not because of them even. It's even not because they're the more likely to not be the problem.
Right.
But they say, I know these people. This is not going to work. We need to move on. And they've moved. They've moved. Some of them have moved their families, and they themselves have stayed because this is where they're
moved out of Israel?
Yeah. This is where their jobs are. So that for now, until they figure out something in another country, and then they'll go there. Because they just see where it's going. They just see that it's things are so good, but not good enough. It's not about that. It's about religion, and that's not going to change. So as long as there's enough people who are believing in this, whatever you want to call it, form of Islam or just Islam, in this thing. So yeah, those Arabs get it because they're in it. Right. So they see it a lot better than we do sometimes. But the number, I would say that, I don't know about kicking people out of places. That's an interesting topic. I would say, should we be helping people move who want to move? Not only would that seem like a good policy for us, that would also seem rather humanitarian. What about those people?
I'm sure they'll find a way to spin it.
They can spin whatever they want. Yeah. But what about those people? What if you are somebody who just, wants a better life and you don't see that happening here? Maybe you do deserve a certain amount of assistance, especially if you're living in a hostile environment that you are, first of all, in danger. You're in danger. And they're making it as difficult as possible for you. In Silwan, if you go to Silwan, the neighborhood right outside the Western Wall, outside of the old city, they've painted eyes all over the neighborhood. All over the neighborhood. You can see it. It's not hidden. There are eyes painted all over the neighborhood to try to scare people and that someone's always watching. Because they're afraid people there are going to leave. And they know the Jews want to move in there. And they're afraid the Arabs are either going to sell their houses to Jews or just leave. And this is realistic. They didn't paint these eyes for no reason. They're really worried about this, right? And rightfully so. So, I mean, there's obviously a situation here where strong-arm tactics are being used to cause people to do things they don't necessarily want to do. So, would it be wrong for the Israeli government to try to
like give an incentive?
Yeah, or even just to help people, leave. Again, anybody who wants to stay and be part of Israel, I don't think there's. I mean, maybe like the most extreme, but I think most people would say if you could actually convince me of that, I'm game. Voting, not voting. Okay, that's an interesting discussion. Okay, but
it's actually a discussion I want to have with somebody because but
you can't even have that discussion with an Arab right now because whatever he says is going to come from a situation where he needs to fear for his life.
But I mean more the discussion whether Israel's an actual democracy or not, because
that's a big topic. That's something we can discuss. That's a big topic.
It may take another hour and a half or 2 hours.
What about living here? What about physically being here? So I think Israelis, most Israelis certainly, that if they can be convinced that this could be a peaceful situation, they're certainly down for a lot. But that is not the situation right now. Far from it. Yeah. Far from it, and getting farther.
You think we're getting farther?
From the idea that we can live with the Muslim Arabs
Do you not
in
think...
this country? Now listen, you see the UAE guys, the guys in the Emirates, and the Moroccans, and these people. I don't know. We seem to make it work with them to some degree. It seems to be okay there. There was this incident with the kidnapping and killing.
Yeah.
And that was terrible, obviously.
The Chabad rabbi, yeah.
Yeah, but you see that the Dubai people did not.
They're not happy about it.
They were not happy about it at all. And who knows what the hell they're going to do to these guys. But they're probably going to cut them up on TV. I mean, it's going to be graphic. But no, they were not, and they did not endorse this in any way. And so I think I'm saying this is a hopeless situation. But I mean, were all Arabs supportive of the Nazis in World War II? No, all Arabs were not, but the Palestinians were. And all their leadership was.
It was like the Grand Mufti.
The Grand Mufti. They definitely
met
were.
With Hitler, Yamach Shemai.
Yeah, so obviously there's a problem here. And obviously it has to do with the real estate. And it has to do with religion. But there's certainly a problem here. And this is not a secret. And the idea that we can just kind of ignore it, it's like any other open wound. You let it fester, you get October 7th. That's how it works.
This whole land grab, you've been very since I've known you, very pro and actively so of bringing Jewish presence back into, say, the Old City or Hebron. Where can you explain a little bit of that journey that you've been on with this?
I would just say it's actually very, very simple, just in terms of the idea, which is that's where strength comes from. Land. I mean, if you don't have land, how strong can you be? I mean, Singapore is an interesting example, but it's certainly a rare one. If you don't have land, you got a problem. And if you don't have land that you think is rightfully yours, then you have an even bigger problem.
So how do you argue with somebody who will argue that the land is the Palestinians?
I would say, first of all, I might not even argue with him because that's such a dumb thing to say. I don't even know where to start with that. I mean, if you're telling me that some guy, right, this Muhammad guy, an actual person, owns some land, and you can explain to me how he came to own that land, and if that's reasonable, well, then I'll acknowledge that. Right? And that he's an Arab. Okay. But if you just tell me that I don't know, the entire Negev is Palestinian land, like some people say, or if you tell me Hebron is Palestinian land, what does that even mean? That's nonsense.
And you can tell me if I'm wrong, and this is just me not being knowledgeable, but from a Torah perspective, we go, no, Hebron's ours. Yeah.
Well, what is it? No, but we wouldn't say Hebron's ours, and therefore some guy who's peacefully living on land that he purchased from somebody that rightfully obtained this thing somehow, right? We're just going to go and push him off it. Now, because it's a security situation, then certainly we're going to. But just because we want to, without any compensation, without anything, that's a bit extreme, I would think. I would say that, if you're living on land that you stole from a Jew,
But what do you mean by steal?
If you're living on, meaning there were Jews there.
Yeah.
They own it on paper in the registry, and you'd massacre them.
and just took their homes.
People did massacre them, right? And then you took the home.
You mean there's no squatters' rights for that?
Well, again, you could talk about compensation or whatever you want to talk about, but the idea that we wouldn't take the land back is crazy. Now, of course, the left wing would scream and holler, what about the other way? In 1948, Israel took over tons of land through war. And Arabs lived on that land, and they weren't able to come back.
I feel like war is different.
I think most people do. I feel like war is different. And if you are on the wrong side of war...
Yeah, you lose.
Well, then that's how it works, and nobody would say otherwise. Listen, it's an ongoing conflict. A lot of Israelis want to believe that the conflict is either over or close to over. And a lot of the Arabs think it's just beginning. And that's really what it comes down to. That's really what it comes down. For them, this is an ongoing conflict that it's in its beginning stages. It hasn't gone well for them, but that doesn't mean it can't go better. The Arabs are constantly comparing Israel to the Crusaders, which is ironic since the Crusaders massacred Jews, right? But they will tell you this is the Crusades. There was Arab lack of unity, just like during the time of the Crusades. That's how you were able to come here. You're all Europeans, which is not accurate, but whatever. And you've come here because of your religion. But in the end, as the conflict goes on, you'll get tired. We won't, and we'll win. Almost every Arab will tell you that, right? That is just a standard thing. Okay? And most Israelis are just not, first of all, not aware of this or choose not to be aware of this, right? And we look at it as, I wish this conflict was over already. Can't we just get along? Rodney King style. Can't we just get along and make a Singapore, make a economic oasis, and do all kinds of great stuff together? And they're like, no, we can't. We're in the middle of a war here. What are you talking about? Yeah.
I mean, you've seen a lot of Yidden come in and out of the Heritage House. Have you seen a shift in how the younger guys have now related to Yiddishkeit since October 7th has happened? Like, is there more of a pull towards prideful Judaism or religious Judaism?
It's a good question. It's a very good question, but I don't think it's relevant. Meaning, I think that in the past, even in the past when I was, running the Heritage House, you had more liberal, maybe, guys who were coming to serve in the army or coming to volunteer on different things, and you see less of that now. But I don't think it's because of October 7th or anything like that. I think it's just that the Jewish community in America is shifting very rapidly.
Which way?
I think there's a lot of denial about that, which I think in a way is humorous.
But which way is it shifting?
It's shifting very rightward. You'll see articles about the vote for Trump, and Pico Robertson, there was an article about that. The shift in American Judaism is rapid. It is rapid because it's also, keep in mind, Jews don't live in a vacuum in America. They live in the regular society. And in the regular society of America, the number of children is way down. Marriage is down. All those things that everybody knows, right? And that affects liberal Jews who live in that world. And it does not affect, to a large degree, the people who choose not to live in that world, which are the more religious Jews. They're still having many children, and they're still doing their thing. And when one group has 4 children and one group has 2 children, it takes a long time to see the difference. But when it's 8-1, it doesn't take very long at all. And what's going on in America is dramatic. And unfortunately, many Jewish people in America who are on the left are finding themselves assimilated. And everyone knows about this stuff. This is not, but I don't think people realize to the extent of how all-encompassing it is and how bad the results are. It's a similar thing I tell people with their bank account. You keep taking money out, but you still hope there's more money there.
Yeah.
And then when you look at it, you're like, That's disappointing. But it's not really disappointing at all.
I got a call from the bank today. I feel like I get calls from the bank more often than I texts from the bank, calls and texts from the bank more often than my friends call and text me.
Yeah, but you're also not really so surprised. You're just like disappointed, right? So like here too, it's like when you look at the numbers, you're like, well, I hope it turns out better than it will, but it won't, So, so the people we see coming are reflecting that. You see a lot more people either coming from Chabad or who are influenced by Chabad. You see a lot of that. You see a lot of people coming from, more religious backgrounds, even, ultra-Orthodox backgrounds. You see a lot of that. And you don't see a lot of, people like me, the way I grew up, and you, the way you grew up. You're seeing a lot less people like that. You're seeing a lot less of that.
Are you seeing more frummies or more
people who grew up in a more frum environment than not? Because the people who grew up in the not frum environment are either married to a non-Jew or on the way to be married to a non-Jew. And a lot of people look at that. I don't want to get into that topic unless you want to, but there's a lot of negativity about that. How can you say that? How can you judge people like that? But listen, at some point you have to be a grown-up and be realistic and just understand that in a relationship, if two people have different interests that are important to them, it causes problems. The more you can connect with each other, the better the relationship's going to be. If one person has one religion and the other person has another religion that they actually believe in on any level, that's going to cause disconnect. I always tell people, I was a rabbi on campus in America, and one time I was giving out menorahs for Hanukkah on campus, and this nice non-Jewish girl came over and she said, "Can I have a menorah?" And I said, "Well, are you Jewish?" And she said, "Well, my boyfriend is, and I'd like to give it to him." And I was like, "Well,
sweet.
Then you certainly can have a menorah." First of all, it's very nice of you. Besides that, and I know you're doing this for the purest of intentions, right? But what are you saying when you give him that menorah? Here is something I have no use for, but you should.
Oh, I don't look at it that way.
But it is. You can't ignore
so?
it. She's not saying that on purpose. She has the purest of intentions, I believe. But is it good for the relationship? No, it's not good for the relationship.
Why not? Why doesn't she see
because
him light? Why doesn't she see him? What? No, but that's what I'm saying. Why doesn't she see him lighting the menorah and something click in her? She could
ask for two.
What?
She could ask for two.
Well, maybe in her mind, it's not for me.
It's not for her. I'm not judging her on any level.
No, I don't think you are.
She's fine. She's actually, probably right. So, but I'm saying, you can't ignore these basic realities, and it's just the intermarriage thing is a killer for Judaism, especially in a society where the overwhelming majority are not Jewish. You just can't expect people. I see it in my family. I see it. You see it everywhere. All you have to do is look.
It seems like I'm reading one of Rabbi Ken Spiro's books about the history of Jewry, and it seems like a very common theme of Jews being like the Hellenistic cultures, the Enlightenment period. There's always seems to be this almost carousel of integration within Jews, and then all of a sudden it's like it doesn't matter. Goodbye. You're Jewish. You're Jewish.
See it all the time. You have weird things that happen sometimes, like in Spain when you had the Inquisition. The
Inquisition.
That was weird. Yeah, things were going so well. Why did you go and mess it up? Or in Germany, where so many Jews were assimilating, and it seemed to be going well for them. And then all of a sudden the Germans were like, "No, we got to kill you all." That's a whole topic of what is assimilation and why what do you call it?
It's just the more you
metaphysical.
The more I read about it and the more I study it, the more it makes no sense.
Right.
It's really unnatural. I don't want to say unnatural.
Rabbi Raphael Shore, Ken Spiro's brother-in-law. He just did a movie and a book about this topic, the anti-Semitism and why it's so weird.
Do you know the name of the movie?
The movie is called Awakening, I believe. And the book is called Who's Afraid of the Big Bad Jew? I think that's called that. They just came out.
Okay.
And both of them. And I might have gotten those titles slightly wrong, but they're pretty much Rabbi Raphael Shore. And he's talking about anti-Semitism. Like, this is crazy. Like, this is a different kind of bigotry than you're used to. And it very much is. So I think that, but besides the anti-Semitism, the assimilation is just a matter of like, it's all encompassing. I mean, it's everywhere. It's everywhere. And again, I don't think there's any nefarious intentions there. I don't know of any person. I have no experience with somebody who's like, let's see if we can marry the Jews and destroy Judaism. Like, I've never heard anybody say that ever, but that's what happens.
You know, it's. I have to say, since October 7th happened, it's been really comforting and strengthening to see Jews standing up for themselves, especially like in America. You see these these Jewish college students who are being barred from schools and like really standing up for themselves. You know, but so my question is because I want to wrap up here. It's called the podcast is called The Uncomfortable Yid for a reason. For the Jew that's still uncomfortable, maybe within his Yiddishkeit or just presenting himself as Jewish because of the fear of what's been going on, what advice would you have for them?
First, I think your question is very relevant, very contemporary, obviously. And I think after October 7th, there were a lot of people who were kind of put in a position of, am I going to be openly Jewish or not? Now, obviously, for the religious Jews, they were a little stuck on that because, that's their whole identity. Now, of course, theoretically, they could go undercover, I guess, but there's a limit to how far they can go without really, changing their whole life. Whereas the other less observant Jews on college campuses in particular, they had a real decision to make, like a real decision. Like, how far am I going to take this? I can blend in. I can just, just not say anything or whatever. Or I can stand up. And you see the results. There are definitely more people who stood up, and there are a lot of people who stood up and said, I'm Jewish, I'm with Israel, I'm a normal person, and, I'm doing it, and whatever happens, happens. Right? But certainly there are other people that we don't hear as much about who just kind of slinked away. You had to make a decision. It was kind of one of those things where it was a fork in the road. And it was forced. It was forced on people. But that's what happened. And I think that, going forward, but that was really always there, just without the danger part. It's really always there. You have to decide. You have to make decisions. You have to be, I'm not saying you have to stop being uncomfortable so quick right away. I'm not saying it's easy. I would never say that, right? That's pompous and incorrect, right? I'm saying but you do on some level have to make decisions. I think like Jordan Peterson talks about this stuff a lot, right? That you have to grow up and make decisions that will decide where you're going. And that's incredibly uncomfortable. And sometimes we're forced into those situations. And sometimes that's like a favor done to us, right? And sometimes we're not. But either way, it must be done. And certainly for some people, it's much harder than other people. Some people have it so easy, it appears. Maybe it's not as easy as it appears. But certainly people have, there's no sense of fairness in this, right? Some people have a very hard time with this. And that's probably not their fault. But it doesn't mean that they can just slink away from it just because it's not fair. They have to make these decisions to move forward, to figure out what they need to figure out. And it may take again, everybody's different, and there's no sense of fairness. But
what do you mean figure out what?
Figure out, who am I? What do I believe? What is right? And what am I going to do about it? And to say, well, I'm going to take a few years off from that while I don't know. I have an uncle, and he's a wonderful man. And he lived in Hawaii for a few years. And he was really good at it. He built tree houses.
He was really good at living in Hawaii.
Yeah, he built tree houses. He helped other people build tree houses. And he was living in Hawaii. And he wasn't.
Yeah, people are gonna watch this and be like, "Oh my goodness, I didn't know all they do in Hawaii is build tree houses."
No, yeah, he lived in like the nature, not in like the hotels. And he ate the fruit and everything, and he was doing that. And actually, what happened was something bad happened, not to him, and not he didn't do it, but something bad happened, and he was like, "Oh, that's not good, that's not right." And the people were like, "Well, we're not going to do anything about it because we're just happy."
Can I ask you what happened?
I think there was or something there was some kind of sexual assault, not involving him, but involving people around him. And the people said, "Well, we're not going to get involved with this because it's not comfortable. It's really just not. It's a very uncomfortable situation." And he was like, "Not for me. I'm getting out of here." And that was a choice he made. I mean, he was very comfortable there. But then he said, "Well, this is not right. I can't be part of this." And then he changed his whole life. Now we're not all going to have, so to speak, the blessing of that uncomfortable, very uncomfortable situation where you have to decide what to do. Although more often than not, we do. We do have those things happen. But it's a matter of doing what is right and what am I doing about it? And we all have to deal with that. Maybe even on a daily basis, maybe more. And it's not comfortable at all. And it might never be comfortable. But that's the struggle that is the human struggle. Thank God in Judaism we have a book that helps us with it.
Yeah,
we have a manual.
They say it's a pretty good book.
I mean, yeah, because if it's not, you have the wrong manual. Good luck building the thing.
Well, Rabbi Packer, there's a camera over my shoulder. Is there a place that can you tell the people where they can find you, how they can help out the Heritage House, whatever you want to tell them?
That's a good question. I'm on the Facebook, of course, if anyone still uses that. We have a website.
Just look there.
www.heritagehouse.org.il. I'm on Instagram, Facebook. I'm on Twitter, but I'm not X. I'm not sure how it works 100%. I'm a little late to that game. I'm not on OnlyFans, even though I said I was earlier. Not yet. But so, yeah, I don't know. I'm out there.
And we'll make sure that when we post this, there'll be links and whatnot to everything. Packer, this has been amazing. Thank you so much.
It was great to be here.
Amazing.